DJ Sigher, one of the old guards of hip hop, Trials of Life, the Gut Snipes, and you're checking out Mind Power Composition. My musical influences, I guess I'd have to say probably early days musical influence, just my brothers, I guess. My brother was mad into music, all kinds of genres of music, punk, and growing up and always having loads of records and playing them. And then my love for music really just, I said it before, and it just came through BMXing, to be fair, and just hearing kids playing like electro records, and then just all of a sudden for me that was just like, you know, some obscure music from outer space that I just wanted to find out more. So I didn't really, not really growing up on like musical experiences or anyone who shaped me and pointed me in the right direction, but just as a person sometimes I'm kind of that person who's, when they're into something, just wants to go and seize it and grab it and just do all I can to just try and embrace it and bring it into my life. When did I first, my first musical item for production? Well, it's got to be a tape deck. It was a tape deck. That was my first thing for doing production, was just having a tape deck. Maybe that's because I was, you know, in the 80s, and just pause, tape, just keep pausing. I had a record that my mum had. It was called something like Disco Nights. It was like a K-Tel record, and it had like the Whispers on it, and it had Rapper's Delight, and I would just be like pausing that. So that's really what I had. And then the actual one that you could call a sampler was, I know lots of people maybe had games when they were younger, like Commodore Amiga. We had a Commodore Amiga that you used to play kickoff on a football game, and on it you could have a little music program. Can't even recall what it was called. And that was my first thing for doing production. It was very, very limited. It was just like 4 channels that scrolled down the screen, and if you wanted it in stereo, you had to have both samples on 2 channels to make it in stereo. And that's pretty much it. And sometimes like First Rate would come up and make some beats with me, and it was very, very, very lo-fi, and we really didn't know how to take it any further than just making beats, putting them on tape, and just wondering what the next phase of it was. Was I showing the ropes on my first production equipment? Well, you didn't really need to be showing the ropes on the Commodore Amiga. It pretty was a home computer, so there was no ropes to be showing there. It was that, and if you wasn't very good at it, then you just went and played the game. Basically, it was that basic. But then, obviously, to take it the next step further, we got an Akai 950, and that was just like, I didn't have a clue what to do, basically. And obviously, you're working on this little machine, and I'd ring people like Dexter, Johnny F, when there was like Liberty Grooves. I just used to ring everybody and anybody. I was probably like a complete pain in the bum, to be fair. I would just be calling people, and I'm not really one for reading manuals. And today now, if I read stuff, I'm pretty much trying to read it back to front for some reason. If I get record lists, I read them from down up. So yeah, it was just ringing people and finding your way. And a bit like the production skills now is just to get to the end point where it sounds okay. There was probably hundreds of different things you could do on it that I didn't even have a clue about, but as long as I could get the music sounded as I wanted to, that was the main aim. How did I acquire the 950? Well, probably out of duress, to be honest. So we were part of the group of Gut Snipes, or it was mainly, there was like Cell 1 and First Rate, and then there was me, and we're making beats, but we didn't really know how to take it further. So then we heard about this guy, DJ Lacey, unfortunately, rest in peace, who passed away, who also lives not too far from here, probably like about 30 miles away. And someone said he was selling his Akai 950. I think at the time it was like £1,000. I'm a kid growing up, I don't have £1,000. None of us do have £1,000. But unfortunately, I did manage to beg my dad to lend me £1,000 on the view to when I became really rich and famous and a good producer that I would pay him it back. And of course, that's never happened. So me, Cell 1 and Prime Cuts, we drove to Sawbridgeworth and to get this 950. Took it back, none of us knew how to use it. So we kind of had a few little feelers, and then it was spent times of just experimenting, trying to put stuff on it. We would carry it up to Liberty Groove's record shop sometimes when we wanted to make stuff, or if we had songs that we were going to take to the studio. Sometimes we would take the 950 to the studio and the engineer would show us what to do. So anytime we did take like pre-production to the studio, it was very, very messy. I mean, sometimes the engineer would be like, I can't work with this, because stuff was all over the shop, unfortunately. And I still have it up there with tons and tons of discs that would be nice to go through and see what's on them, but I probably can't work it. So so that's my first experience and my sort of going through a 950. A learning curve on the equipment. The learning curve is massive. My learning curve is still growing now. I mean, I don't think I'll ever master some of these instruments, some of these samplers, and I don't intend to be fair. So that learning curve is now up there gathering dust, and I'm onto a new learning curve, which is the MPC. And like I said, I won't master it, but it's all about the records. It's my style of the production. So yes, I'm a bit of a not the best at using the MPC, but that's my learning curve. Do I think the Akai 950 was the right piece of equipment to get me to this stage of where I am now? I do think it's the right piece of equipment, although the one we had didn't really have the full memory, so the sample time was very, very short. And being as I like to do, I was growing up in an era of doing loops, listening to people like Tribe Called Quest, all stuff like that, which is like loop based sampled hip hop. It was really quite short, even though it was a lot more memory than the SP. It was still quite short for what I wanted to use, because I guess I like adding lots of horns and stuff to it. But it's the right piece of equipment because it got me to actually release a record based on using that equipment. So if it wasn't for that equipment, I'd still be stuck with the Commodore Amiga, just with very, very simple beats. And I think when you're young, growing up, when you're a teenager, unfortunately you don't know the next level to take something to actually making a record. You know, you're at home, you've gone from a tape deck, you've gone from a home computer, you've gone to an Akai 950, and it's all this little stage to actually helping you get to release a record. So yeah, it was the right piece of equipment to get me to this point I am now. What piece of equipment do I use nowadays? I use an MPC 2000 XL, and I also just use a MacBook with Logic on it. And the MPC is the right piece of equipment that I use now. It's just the simplest to use. I was told by someone it's just cool for hip hop. Obviously for the drums, it's very easy to sequence stuff. It's very easy to play stuff in, and I guess I'm a bit more of a hands-on guy where I like to sort of having the stuff on the pads really gives you a good feel to what you can do, rather than you're cutting samples on a computer screen. So it's like another part. It's an instrument, obviously, that you can play with your samples, and it's very, very simple to use. I'd say to anybody who wants to just start off sampling or wants to make hip hop music, I think nowadays you can probably get them cheap, and it's just a hands-on thing. It's just something that can, it's like an extra part of your imagination. That's the beauty of it. You're not just sitting there looking at a screen. You can actually touch and feel and play it. So yeah, for me the MPC 2000 or any of that range is definitely the right piece of equipment for me. Do I prefer hardware or software? Yeah, I'm hardware all day long. Like I said, because the records are hardware. The records are something physical. I don't use digital samples. I don't use stuff off the internet. I don't use MP3s to sample. I use hardware. I use records only, original records as well. So they need to be put with hardware to be used. So then that's the beauty of it. Like these records are just another extension of that MPC. I'm hardware all day long, where I can just play the record, listen to it, and then put it into the MPC. My favourite brand of musical equipment, as said before, is I haven't tried out a lot of equipment, and maybe I'm being a bit shallow that way, and maybe I'm being a bit blinkered and a bit set in my ways, but I'm just going to go for the Akai. It's really where I started to make stuff, and I don't really need to go and try and use other stuff. And sometimes if I'm struggling with something, people are saying, yeah, you've got to try this, you've got to check this. But I do find some of them people tend to go from one thing to another thing to another thing. To me, don't change what's broke. It isn't broke, it does exactly what I want, what it says on the tin. So yeah, I'm just going to stick with the Akai range. Right, what would I recommend for a beginner? Pretty much I would just go through the Akai range. I'm sure, like I said, I'm pretty much stuck in my ways, and the 2000 XL suits me. But I would definitely check out some of the new Akai stuff, because I'm sure it's the same, like the MPC, it's the same feel to do it, but obviously it'll have a lot more stuff on there that will make life a little bit easier for you. I'm sure they've listened to people along the way and just made stuff a little bit easier for new people to get into making music. Right, why did I choose hardware over software? Well, I didn't really choose it, to be fair. With the MPC, I didn't really need any software, first of all, so I really could just use it, plug it into the amplifier I was using or whatever I was using, and make music. I didn't really need to see anything on the screen, because obviously I was just using the pages that's on the screen on the Akai. So as I said, I only got a MacBook really 2 years ago, so I've never ever used hardly any software. If I have done stuff in the past and I just would take the MPC into the studio, I would just take it to give to the engineer, and that's where all my music would be on the hardware. So yeah, I haven't really used a lot of software. Right, what's my views on sampling? My views on sampling are, I just wish nowadays that people would care more about sampling records and the music, and not worried about obviously getting sued and doing stuff. Unfortunately, when that happened, maybe Gilbert O'Sullivan and on like Bismarcky and stuff, for me it just killed hip hop. To me, hip hop is sampling records. If you want to take a 2-bar loop, if you want to take a 4-bar loop, if you want to be like Tribe Called Quest, who used Billy Brooks and virtually took the whole record, go and use it. You know, I know you have that copyright and issues with it, but hip hop's from the ghetto, hip hop's from the Bronx. You know, they didn't worry about, you know, ripping people's records and double decking records and whether they're going to get sued. I mean, this is the essence of hip hop, is sampling records, you know. So to me, it's, as I said before, it's no good going on the internet. It's no good getting MP3s and having a massive collection on your memory stick. This is what hip hop's about. This is what made hip hop. This is why you fell in love with hip hop. This is why you wanted to discover records. This is what made Bambaataa who he was, is by going out and discovering samples and breaks and new stuff. And it can be anything, but to me, that's what sampling's about. You know, nowadays there's so many producers out there, but can they really say they're a producer who goes and digs records and makes their own sound by going through the records? So that's my take on sampling. Sampling is hip hop. What genre do I find myself sampling? Is undoubtedly soul music, obviously, because the grooves in soul records inevitably are the grooves that I want to use for hip hop music. I'm mad into collecting like rare soul records anyway, so these days if I get records, I tend to get records I like, and inevitably they'll have records on that I can sample. So the days of me just going out buying breaks are pretty much long gone. I'll just buy hordes and hordes of records constantly, and within them, no doubt there'll be lots of musical points that I can use. But yeah, soul music is a genre that I would definitely just go to time and time again to sample. Do I share my samples with people? Well, if you're watching this interview or a bit later on, you'll definitely see I don't mind sharing my samples. The days of keeping stuff secret are pretty much long gone, unless I'm bringing it out on a record. If someone wants to know a sample, I'm happy to tell them, to be fair. I mean, the chances of them going to use it before you now are pretty much small. I don't mind sharing. It's all part of the love, really. Maybe as you get a bit older, maybe in the days when I was younger, then maybe competition was a bit more fierce, you might have actually not shared stuff. But now as you get older, your outlook changes on music, and definitely your outlook on life changes, and you'll be kind of like, yeah, come and listen, come and share. If you want to come and see what the break is, I'm absolutely fine with that, not a problem. How do I get my samples? Never e-digging, really. I pretty much get auction papers, I pretty much go to charity shops, go to record stores. I'm fortunate enough sometimes to go DJing different places, so I'll always go and hit the record stores there. So I'm a firm believer of keeping record stores alive, going to support them, going buying records from record stores and record dealers. So yeah, that's my first port of call, is really physically taking your sound burger, going to record places, playing records rather than over the internet, and just physically going through stuff, because a lot of time people always want to sell you breaks, and sometimes I find that obviously the stuff that's there in your face is not always the best thing to use. So if you've got your sound burger and you go to a record store, the record store owner might want to sell you this like £100 record because it's got a nice break on it, and then you can go through like the dollar bin, the pound records, and you'll find far much more stuff. So that's my view to like going and find samples. Okay, my favourite sampler is definitely the MPC 2000 XL. It's the one I got after the 950, and I haven't really needed to change it. So it's my little baby. It does exactly what I need it to do, and my software is, I just use Logic, exactly the same. It seems quite a simple program to use, even though I'm quite new to it, probably like just the last couple of years. Logic seems to be pretty Logic. When I make a track, do I focus more on drums or on the sample? Me personally, I just definitely focus on the sample more, because what's a record without a melody? So you can have drums, but obviously the drums don't have the melody. So as much as hip hop is all about drums, I know that, and I know that's a massive part of it, and people always go mad over drums, having them nice and loud and having the snares nice and sharp. But you think of all the good records, you need a melody. So mine will just be the melody of the record will have that hook, that 1 bar or that 2 bar, which will say to you that can make a hip hop record. So yeah, it's definitely finding a melody first is my first port of call, really. As an MPC user, I'd say golden times, I would say the MPC 2000, the MPC 2000 XL, and of the new generation, the Akai Renaissance, I'd say is probably the best one as well. What are my two favourite instruments? I would definitely go for the flute, and I'd say the trumpet and the flute. I can't play any instruments. It's quite funny, is my dad is a skip driver, and so he's retired now, but when he was a skip driver, he actually found this nice flute in a case, and I had it for a while and I tried to play it, but it's the one instrument on any record sounds soulful. You couldn't play it on any record, I don't think, and it doesn't have that soulful note to it. I think because it's almost like heart attached to someone obviously blowing in it, a bit like a trumpet. So I like them instruments because they sound the most soulful. I don't think it's like a guitar, you can make it sound rocky, you can grunge it up a little bit. You can't really do that with a flute. It always will have that soulful, funky edge, and a little bit the same with the trumpet as well. If I could learn to play any instruments, I would play the flute. I probably should have kept that one I just said about and learned how to play it, but I'm probably a bit too impatient and impetuous to actually sit down and learn anything properly, although part of me would love to actually play something. I think something inside would really like me to play a musical instrument and be in a band and be in a group and also write music and songs, but I think my personality is a little bit too impatient to sit there and learn, unfortunately. If I could choose two producers to come to this lovely little studio and make some beats with, obviously the first would be DJ Premier. I'm sure that's on many people's just for he shaped the way I use samples and looked at stuff, and just digging for records. Really, he was the whole first one of more focusing on jazz samples. And as soon as he said the word jazz, I was just like going in record shops, just buying jazz records, not even knowing if they was any good. Just, you know, the guy would say it was jazz, I would buy them. So, and just for his style, it's just his ear for something that can be a half bar or a 1 bar loop, just make it sound brilliant. And the other person I would pick would be Q-Tip. Probably not everyone would say was obviously, you know, the producer, but he definitely had that soulful edge for hip hop that I like. He had a mad record collection, and I think his outlook was not being frightened to use long samples, long melodic samples, and just different stuff. You know, it didn't have to be so hard. You could have little happy hooks and still make it sound, you know, like authentic hip hop. So yeah, they would be the two people I would pick. If I had to pick two MCs to come and sit over some of my beats, well, it would be a pleasure. Of course, I would go for Rakim. He's probably like the god of all rhyming. I'm sure Nas has come to try and take his crown, but as hip hop goes, just his vocal tones, his whole demeanour of hip hop, you know, probably doesn't smile a lot when he does it, but it just comes across as exactly how hip hop should sound to my ears. And the other person I would pick would be Big Daddy Kane. I've managed to see him live, and I don't think no one can roll off bars live. I don't think anyone can write raps as good as Big Daddy Kane, and he'll be another one. So he could sit on the fast jams, he could give it that party feel, and then I could get Rakim to give it that low little ghetto feel to the song. So yeah, there'd be my two choice, Big Daddy Kane and Rakim. Okay, besides Q-Tip and DJ Primo, other three producers that I would pick, I would go definitely for like MF Doom, I think, just because to have he's not frightened of just using his own style, and it might be a bit disjointed and stuff. I mean, I used to love like KMD, and I don't think loads of cats were really up on KMD at the time, mainly because it wasn't like a big production sound, but they obviously loved collecting records, they obviously loved digging for records. So I would go for that. I would go for Large Professor, because Breaking Atoms is probably like one of the all-time LPs, and just the instrumentation, the way samples were used on that whole LP just kind of shaped. I like to do that kind of style of making beats, is make them into songs. They're not just like 1 bar loops, you know, they have choruses, they have starts, they have some little spoken intros. And also I'd go for Marley Marl, because I think without Marley Marl you probably wouldn't have had the other producers really. You know, he sort of like paved the way of using a lot of the early door samples that, you know, probably like mid 80s, late 80s, shaped our lives for a lot of hip hop really. So yeah, those would be the three people I'd pick other than Q-Tip. Okay, who am I feeling at the moment? I just really have to give like hats off probably just to Cut Chemist and DJ Shadow as a group and as individuals, because I'd like to think I'm from that same school of just appreciating music, and I think because they've got such a love and appreciation of music, that shows in anything they do, whether it be just a DJ set, I know they're just on tour doing an acapella art thing, whether it be that or making beats or just talking about records. You know, to me, you know, the path that they're travelling is the path that, you know, I'm not saying everyone should travel, but if you're into hip hop and you're into records, to me it's the right path, because, you know, I've said it before, when you pull out records, they're the same as, you know, you just want to look at them, you want to read them, you want to find out who played on them, you want to find out who produced them, you want to know the record label, you want to dig deep into what it's doing, and with that shows on the music they make. That's my personal view, is it just shows on all the stuff they make. So I'm going to go for Cut Chemist and DJ Shadow. This is the first record I'm going to showcase, or this is a future release for the Gut Snipes, featuring Odyssey and Oxygen from the crew the Soundside, and it's a track called Plastic Perils. It's one of the newest songs I've done, pretty much went over to Florida last year before, got some cheap records. One of these samples is for one of these cheap records, Stephanie Mills LP on Motown, and pretty much my style of production is really just going with the flow, listening to some music and instantly saying that's a hip hop sample, that is just made. I'm not really a major cut and paste. I try and just do loops that flow together. So I'll give you a little demonstration of the first song. It's basically going to be about a song about the perils of plastic, not just plastic, overpaying on your credit cards, using too much money, spending money you haven't got, buying too many records, that style of plastic and all. So we're going to do 3 verses. Each rhymer's going to do a different part of the perils of plastic. I'll go through some of the little samples so you can hear them individually. So we started off with this little Stephanie Mills joint. I don't know what the actual name of the track is. It's something about the city or city living, and also I think it might even incorporate this the plastic perils or something like that in the title. An early one of hers when she was really young, about 16, 17. So this is the first little hook. So to me, just hearing that loop, it just says it's just made for hip hop. You know, if you can hear a first hook and go, you know, I could just imagine it. It could be you could use it as a 1 bar and rhyme over it, a bit like when Brand Nubians did maybe like One for All. You could say it's a hip hop loop. You know, you probably wouldn't even have to add nothing to it. But it's nice and airy and light, so it lends itself to be able to add different samples to it without being too cluttered and stuff to it. So that's how we started. I normally then just try and find a drum break to go with it. So it's a classic drum break, this one. It's QB, Don't Change Your Love. Been sampled a lot. So I don't know if people know like QB, which is the Burke family, Kenny Burke, when they were younger, and on like Windy City and Curton Records. So I just cut that up, just a little half bar with some little stabs and stuff in it. I like to keep my production very, very simple. Not really one to like layer stuff and overlap lots of drums on each other. It's all about the flow of the song and the essence. Then we had some other little horn samples in it, or some other parts of the Stephanie Mills. So that just lends it to a nice little introduction. Then we found I always like some nice little horns, nice atmospheric horns, something people can remember. Chop them up, and then we've got trying to find something. This little sample, which is basically Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons, some dodgy record that I got from the charity shop, and pretty much all of it's rubbish. I think this is actually a version of Walk On By. Pretty much most of the song is really, if I let it play. It's all going to be a chorus where there's going to be some words cut up by prime cuts, and this is going to be this is when the verse kicks in, when that horn kicks in. A lot of time when I do my beats, I try and make it a story already for the rhymer. So rather than it's just a one beat or just a little beat for them to rhyme over, I try and do something that can encourage them to write different styles of rap, because every style of music really needs a certain style of rap to go over it. I think, you know, some sounds quite like a braggadocio rap, some quite story rap, and it's all in that essence of the music. So normally once I've done something on the MPC, the next thing I do, well, I'll just transfer it onto a MacBook, which I've only had probably a couple of years. I'm so slow to get any kind of like technical equipment, so I managed to get myself a nice little MacBook, which I normally need people to give me pointers on. So this is how it will sound roughly with some rhymers on it.
Gutter snipes, flash perils, cell 1, oxygen, or the sea, yeah, time to get 'em. You got your mind on your money, concentrated on the cash, quick fast to make a blast, cause the stats don't last. Therefore, you just proceed, yes, and need to use the blast to bring it out, no hesitation, as time's getting drastic with the spike here. Money gone, robbing the piggy bank without a clue or a care, yeah. You spending money that you ain't got, cause your dough can't grow if you don't mind your lotto. You get the boot if you don't mind your business. You're caught up in the Joneses, buying expensive ass phones and shoes. You sing the blues when you see your bank balance zero to the negative. Shot, need a sedative with your bad habits and your actions are repetitive. It's no wonder why that it came to this. Can't miss, check the list because your credits are wish now. Reckless in your ways and really don't pay with a mountain.
Alright, then the second joint we're going to showcase is a song we're calling Just Back to the Essence, and it pretty much is just back to the essence. Pretty simple drums, a nice little hook, and we're going to have a little Rakim snippet just saying back to the essence. Hopefully we're going to get sell one on it. MCM from Caveman hopefully is going to rhyme on it. We've spoken to him and he's cool and he's down with it. So and pretty much this is I heard that the sample that I heard that I liked was Ahmed Jamal sample, and he's been sampled loads, but no one's ever sampled this track for some reason, which is fine, hard to believe because it's so good. So I started off with this Ahmed Jamal sample, if I find it. So it was really just like, it's just like a 1 bar loop, but it needed something else to go with it. So I'm always buying 45s, just, you know, mainly 45s I like, regardless, sometimes not even for just samples. And there's an Eddie Russ one, he's famous for like the Lope song, but this one's called Natasha, and it's more of a keys thing, so and that's pretty much it. Is, but I thought to myself it'll go well on the end of, as the end of like a 4 bar, and then it's just finding some drums. So the drums I got is from an LP by a group called Zebra on Polydor, and I've had this LP I don't know, 20 years, and I think that's the joy of having tons of records, is sometimes you can go through them again 20 years later and hear something and go, damn, didn't know that was on there. Or, and you're always finding new stuff, so you know, everyone thinks you've always got to go out and buy loads and loads of breaks and keep buying like new stuff, but you can definitely go into your stack and find something new. So that's pretty much that. And what else have I got in here? A little sample by a guy called Ted Ford. It's just an obscure Soul 45, and this is how it sounds.
Back to the essence.
That's pretty much for this one. Like, it's going to be very, very simple. I think the idea is maybe just the rhymes are just going to rhyme for 8 bars, and then the DJ's going to let off for maybe 4 or 8 bars, do some cutting, then another 8 bars, and just keep it like that, nice. And sometimes you do the same formats if it's like 16 bar rap, 8 bar chorus. So maybe just change it up a little bit, and the people can show their skills. Keep it nice and sparse, lots of room for the rhymers to do their thing. So that's the second cut that I'm showcasing, and it's just a tune called Back to the Essence. Yeah, this track is the third track that we're going to play that we're showcasing, and it's a track we're going to call You've Gotta Have Guts. So it's pretty much, you know, you've got to have guts if you want to get out there and do your stuff. You've got to have guts, as in you've got to have the gut snipes, hopefully, in your record collections. And this is kind of made, sometimes you have lots of samples lying around and you've had them for years, and then something will just come up, will set it all off together. And to be fair, it was the drums that set this track off, and it's basically from this English, how can I say it, like religious group that have got a load of rugby players on the front. You would never think there's a drum break on it. They're all playing rugby on an English field. So it's the drums that really set it off. And started adding all these other bits to it. The little horns at the start I've had for a very long time. They're from a Jerry Mulligan LP called The Age of Steam on A&M Records. It's cool. It's like that. The bass line is a version of Grandma's Hands, which is obviously originally done by Bill Withers. This is Grandma's Hands. And a lot of my songs, like I said, they're all about the flow. They're probably not major like play-out songs. I'm not trying to conquer clubbing and take over the world with a massive party song. To me, it's songs that hopefully will stand the test of time, that you can still listen to them in 20 years time or 30 years time and go, yeah, it still sounds good, it still sounds fresh. And it sounds fresh because I'm sampling records from 30 years ago. They sound fresh to me, so I'm hoping that the samples still contain that essence. They still sound fresh. It's all about in the groove. So yeah, this one's called You've Gotta Have Guts, and hopefully we'll get to release it on a Gut Snipes LP, hopefully on the record label I run called Super Disco Edits. Well, that's pretty much it. Most of the basis of actually making the beats are all pretty much the same. I like to do loops if I can. If not, I'll chop it up, but most of the time the main essence of the song I like to do loops, just so it's more flowy. I know a lot of people like to do chopping stuff, and even though this machine is probably designed so you do drums and then obviously you could just tap them in, you know, on tempo and whatnot, they never sound the same to me. They always sound choppy, bitty. You know, I'd rather just get a nice loop of a drum and then just start adding stuff to it. So we've got this nice little rock guitar that we put over it, kind of like Master Race. This is the Grandma's Hands. These are the little horns. That's it.
Game's over.
Oh yeah, we've got some little words things we're thinking of using. Yes, that's pretty much it. I mean, I could tap away and pretend I'm really into, you know, doing all these things on YouTube and people were doing all this with beats and that, but I just like to compose it really on this and then just let it play. To me, that's the best way of doing it, and just syncing up the pages of different stuff and making it a nice song for the rhyme to rhyme across. This is the third song, and it's called You've Gotta Have Guts from the Gut Snipes. Alright, number 4 is, if you're familiar with the Gut Snipes, this is not the last single, because that was some unissued material from '94. The track before that, or the release before that, was a record we released, and it's called Sucker Punch, and this is the beat for Sucker Punch. I'll just talk you through it. It was never really meant to be a song about boxing, but like I said before, listening to the samples, for some reason, just kind of thought that a boxing bell on the record would give it that feel for a boxing song. Don't ask me why. Maybe just using your imagination, and you know, the imagination is in the music really. So that's why we put this little boxing bell on it, and then we also put some crowd noises, and it's good because then you do that and you can give the rhymer the idea, and sometimes if they're struggling got a bit of writer's block and they don't know what to write about, you can say, yeah, what about this one about Sucker Punch? You know, we're delivering a little extra blow to the other MCs and the rhymers and the groups, you know, so it's all a bit of fun. So this is one is called Sucker Punch. So in the record, like Prime cuts up these little things. I gave him the little snippets, and he'll just cut these from Wild Style and Get Bad Now's Pigmeat Markham. It's really funny. This actual sample, the main riff of the sample, had been used by someone before. Obviously, you can look at who sampled, and it tells you sometimes. Because I always try and use samples that no one else has used if I can. So I pulled this record out that I'd had for years and played it and instantly thought, oh, that sounds brilliant. But my first thought before I make anything is I'm going to check, make sure it's not been ripped to pieces. If it had, I probably wouldn't do anything for it, but someone else, one person's overused it, and I personally think I've used it better. So it's a version of Ain't No Sunshine by Charles Williams on Mainstream Records, which you get a lot of stuff on Mainstream. It's kind of a jazz label that put out some funky jazz more in the 70s. And what I did is I just, if I can find it, let's have a look. I had this little, just like a half bar, and that's just a string from another part of the same song, obviously not joined to this, and that's basically what I thought I would attach them together to make the. And it just so happened, it was just lucky that the first sample had this little echoey string in the background anyway, so I didn't really plan it that way. But that they just when they play together really flowed. If you hear this part of the strings on the first sample, they just happen to flow into it. So it almost seems pretty seamlessness sort of. And then we'll do else we get. You might recognise this, maybe not the sample, but it's just a version of Superstition of one of the cheap kind of like Top of the Pops LPs, like a UK thing, or one of the ones on like Marble Arch, like a very, very cheap record. But that's a bell.
Get bad now.
And that's Pigmeat Markham.
Get bad now. Come on, come on, come on, come on.
Wild Style.
Come on, come on. Get bad now. Come on, get bad.
And then that's it really, very, very simple, like I said, but mainly just let the music do the talking, not maybe my production skills, but just choosing nice samples that definitely when you first hear them have that hip-hop look, or that hip-hop hook that you're kind of looking for, and just let them play.
Come on, come on. Get bad now. Come on.
This is one of the songs I'll show you how I construct it. This is probably one of the harder songs for me. Most of my stuff is pretty like loop based, so obviously there's not tons of chopping up. This one is from a record by Joe Williams, I think, on Blue Note Records, and I just really like the instrumentation in it, but it wasn't like a whole loop, so I just kind of chopped it up a little bit. I very rarely chop stuff up because it normally sounds rubbish, so it was pretty much them 4 samples. I don't know why, I always tend to do like a lot of echoey stuff, and maybe not used inside the MPC. I know you can do like echoes and reverbs and that. I'm so old school. Normally I just chop the same sample up and just turn it down lower and make that the echo. So that would be me just chopping it up tiny on itself and just basically playing it in afterwards. Is probably not the best method to do, but it's the one that works for me, and it's the one inside my head I can imagine how it's going to sound. I think the hard part was when you have got it all chopped up is getting it into a tempo that's going to sound right. So we just got this little half bar of drums, I think. And I think if you get some little bars of drums first, sometimes at least it gives you a tempo to work on when you've got stuff chopped up. So that's pretty much it with this song. It's very, very small. I'll start off with just getting some drums on this song. All the way I work is different, really. I mean, I don't necessarily start with drums. Sometimes it'll just be a loop, and then I'll try and find the drums for it. This one's a bit more choppy, so I've just I've actually just had the samples first, and then I just try and add bits with it. I just go through the records and just try and add little things with it. So I think I found this little horn, which I think I've just repeated it on loop. So I've repeated part of it, but it gives it a nice little echo feel. And I've got this really long string, which I'm not going to play yet because it plays for ages, and then you can't turn it off. So so that is pretty much my method of working. It is very, very simple. It's all about the records for me. I don't say my production skills are the best, and I'm definitely not the best at using some of the machinery, and I don't know the ins and outs of it. I don't know anything to do with the manual, unfortunately, but I just need to get to the point where the song sounds right for me, and if that point is long-winded and it takes me a long time, then that's fine. You know, I know there's probably quicker processes of getting to that point in time, but to me, inside my head, as long as it sounds alright. So this is what this song sounds like. I've added some strings with it, and it's very, very simple, and it's called, actually, funny enough, it's called Keep It Simple. So there you go. This is the terribly long string intro I told you about. Can't be a bit of classical music in hip hop. And then we've got a little horn coming in, little echoey horn. That's pretty much it. I mean, my way of working changes just to do with the samples, to be fair. It's all some people like to chop up lots and lots of samples, and I think that's made I think sometimes some people need to think that they do more with the samples, showing their flexibility with the music. Obviously they chop it up and change it all around, which is cool, and it's a great way of working, but mine's just unfortunately pretty simple. Just keep it nice and simple, and just let the music and the samples do the talking.